What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American, here today to react and continue learning about why Americans should move to Canada. Part 2. If you haven't seen Part 1, feel free to go check that out or stay here in Part 2. That's perfectly fine as well. But in Part 1, I started learning about the top reasons that Americans should move to Canada. And some of the reasons I learned about in Part 1 kind of surprised me. Like, the number one reason that Americans actually move to Canada, I found out in Part 1, is election results. Now, don't get me wrong, it's very classic here in America during elections that a lot of Americans here start saying, oh, I'm gonna move to Canada. If such and such wins the election, there's no way that's my president. I'm moving to Canada. And you hear that a lot, and I guess a part of me thought that that was just a lot of talk, but no, that's actually the number one reason that Americans do literally, like, give up their entire life and house and job and up and move actually to Canada. I didn't know literally that was the number one reason Americans do that. And then we kind of left off part 1 learning about education and how education is actually better in Canada, and that is a really important one. That is really one you want your country to be excelling at and the best in the world at. And Canada is definitely doing better in terms of Canadians are actually more educated than Americans. Canadians are smarter. No, I don't. Maybe they do have IQ like data. I don't want to see that. But more Canadians have university and college degrees than Americans percentage-wise, and definitely Canadian education is actually affordable, and I think that's what we're going to start off here kind of learning and talking about. So let's take a look, even more reasons here why Americans should move to Canada. Let's see.
In Canada, provincial residents benefit from the lowest tuition fees and various programs that provide financial support. For example, OSAP in Ontario. And even for international students, tuition fees are still lower than in many American schools. And
Wow. Well, that doesn't shock me, actually. Of all the things, yeah, even international students in Canada get better rates than Americans living in America. She also said that you get like a better rate or a better price for your education if you are within your own province. That is something that is very common in America. Like if you go to a college or university in your state, you're going to get a much lower rate. You're going to get a discount. But this is very interesting. I mean, the other thing that's kind of funny to me is nowhere here has she mentioned Canadians like looking for loans, big college loans to pay for their education. That's not even a part of this discussion so far, whereas that's a huge part of American education, looking for loans, whereas she's just saying the province and the schools will work with you and try to give you benefits and reductions, and the price is already a lot more reasonable in Canada. So that's a big, big difference, yeah.
the province of Quebec is famous for the cheapest tuition fees in entire North America.
Really?
So if you're looking for the student fund, Montreal
Really?
is the best place to be. Lastly, every province has its own educational programs for residents, aimed at upskilling the workforce to increase their value and expertise within the job market. So, if you want to change careers, but you're not sure whether you should invest your time and money and pay for higher education, you can consider these free upskilling courses.
What? That is amazing. Wait a minute. If I understand correctly, like just the Canadian governments or the provincial governments offers like education and opportunities to increase your value, like in the workforce, not for like students, but you're like living your life and you're doing your job, and there's programs you can like take advantage of in your province to like learn things after you're done with school? That makes so much sense. That is, man, there's a, a lot of interesting stuff here that I think the United States could really learn from and implement a lot of this stuff. Or we could just move to Canada instead. That's definitely going to be a faster solution rather than waiting for all of this to happen in America. But let's keep going. Next category, safety. Oh, another really important thing. All of this stuff is so important. Canada does safety better? I'm actually very curious about this. In the United States, like, I feel safe. Maybe I'm like in a privileged position where I feel safe, and it depends on your community. It depends on where you live. All that stuff is so important. The United States is so big, it's tough to just say, oh, it's not safe, or oh, it feels so safe. It really just depends where you live, I think. But let's hear this. Safety.
All right. Let's bring another spicy topic to the mix. We will start by saying that Canada is known for its low crime rates and generally safe cities.
Yeah.
Many Americans simply move to Canada because they want to get away from the fear for their safety and to ensure they don't have to worry about their kids getting home safely. The simple reality.
Wow. Okay, this is an extreme one. Like, I really want to hammer down this point that if you feel like your children can't get home safely, you're probably living in one of the highest crime areas in the United States. And don't get me wrong, those places definitely exist in the United States, but I think there's a lot of places in the US you could move to and feel safe for you and your children. Like, honestly, you don't... There's a lot of reasons to move to Canada. Like, this video is pointing out a lot of great stuff. I don't know if safety, like, even... I'd be curious. Is Canada just across the board safer? Or are there places in Canada which could also be, unsafe, like places in America? I'm sure there have to be, right?
The reality is that Canadians are significantly less likely to get murdered than Americans.
What?
3 times less likely to be exact. The US...
What? Wait, what? Hold up. Maybe, okay, throw out everything I just said. Wait, what is this? What? This, like, I'm genuinely shocked. I am 3 times more likely to get murdered than any Canadian anywhere in Canada. So that's a very, very interesting statistic. Very interesting. I didn't know about all that. All right, never mind. Maybe this is... I could extend my lifespan 3 times by moving to Canada. I'm not sure if that's how it works, or... Instead of getting shot 3 times, I'm shot 1 time. Or is that how 3 times works? Or joking aside, 3 times more likely to be murdered just being in America. That's crazy.
News 2021 Best Countries report gave Canada a score of 96.7 out of 100 for safety.
Yeah.
All that while the United States scored 10.8. The most...
What? Man, maybe it's good that I'm seeing this particular video, because, I don't know, it's kind of opening my eyes a bit. Maybe, I still think there's plenty of places in the US you can be safe. But maybe compared to other countries like Canada, like, maybe what I think is safe isn't as safe as what Canadians think is safe, if that makes any sense. I don't know.
Disturbing aspect of safety in the US is public shootings, which seem to have turned into a regular monthly horror. Last year, in 2022, there were 695 mass shootings in America. That's nearly 2 shootings for every day in the calendar year. Just think about it.
Wow.
In contrast, Canada...
Wow. This is really a fascinating category to me. Safety. Because my knee-jerk reaction was like, oh, it's safe here. Come on. But I will clarify, like, again, I do think that in many, many parts of the United States, you're not scared of getting shot. You're not scared of mass shootings. Unfortunately, as a country, this kind of thing does happen. More so than, I don't know, most other countries, this does happen. But I think because the United States is so big, there's a really decent chance that, like myself, you're not close to any of these places where these unfortunate shootings and mass casualty events happen. Um, but I guess for the Americans that this does happen to, they would have a completely different opinion than me. So take that for what it is. I'm just one American, just my experience. It really depends on where you live in the United States, whether you're scared for your kids, scared of guns and violence, or I think I've been fortunate in that way to live in several parts of the United States where that was never really something I worried about. So maybe I'm fortunate in that sense.
I had only 4, and that's already 4 too much. All in all, this is one of the most obvious reasons why Americans move to Canada. They want a safer and calmer life for their children and their families.
Wow, I guess for sure, one thing that can definitely be said here that in general, if you just run the statistics across the board and like take an average, you're much safer on average in Canada than you are anywhere in the United States. Like, if you look at it that way, that's definitely true, and that speaks volumes. And safety is one of those things like healthcare in a way, where it's really something that's very, very important to your life and quality of life, is peace of mind about being safe and healthy. Those are things that are just so, so, so important to your overall happiness, right? Okay, and we're jumping to the next category of why Americans should move to Canada. Immigration policies and family ties. Interesting. Okay.
Canada has one of the most generous immigration policies in the world, with many different pathways for all sorts of individual skills and life situations. Many Americans choose to move to Canada because it's relatively easy to obtain permanent residency.
This is great. I was so curious about this. I think in part one of the things I was wondering about was, how are all of these Americans like moving to Canada so easily? And I guess I think of it that way because in the United States, our pathway to immigration and becoming a legal permanent resident and citizen in the United States is very long, very difficult, complicated. It's not easy to become a United States citizen from what I have heard compared to other countries. So I guess I just kind of think of it like that, whereas that's not necessarily true for Canada. I guess it's easier to immigrate to Canada. I wonder like why that technically is. Is it like less paperwork, less like waiting time, or what?
And eventually get your Canadian citizenship. If you're looking for information about Canadian immigration programs, you can check out Canada.ca website for the selection of programs and step-by-step guides.
Yeah, don't you have to have like a certain reason to immigrate? Like, can Americans just like move to Canada and write down on the paper like, why are you moving here? It's not America. Like, is that a reason? Like, what is this stuff? There's like family sponsorships there. Like if you have someone who lives in Canada, right? Or if you're going for a school or a job, right? Don't you have to have a reason like that?
Additionally, thanks to close ties between the two countries, many Americans have friends and family in Canada, so they simply move to be closer to their loved ones. It's faster and easier to get family sponsorship visa in Canada than to reunite with relatives in the US. So that makes choosing Canada a no-brainer. Canada also seems like a more welcoming environment for newcomers. And
this is a good point she kind of is making me think about. If you're an American and you just want to move to another country, you want to get out of the United States. Just in that sense, even if you didn't care where you went, so you just wanted to get out of the United States, what the top choice would probably just be Canada for the reason that it's the easiest. Canadians already speak the same language, sort of a similar culture, although I've learned a lot of reasons why our cultures are not so similar. but similar enough that we can understand it. It's not far from the United States, and apparently the immigration laws are pretty lenient and it's pretty easy to immigrate. So that makes a lot of sense to me, why Americans would choose Canada just for those reasons. And then you add all this other stuff on top, where Canada has the election results, where Canada is not run by our politicians. There's job opportunities, quality of life. You live longer, more educated, cheaper education, safer, three times less likely to be murdered. Yeah, this is all starting to make a lot of sense to me.
That's our next point.
And finally, we have culture. So why Americans should move to Canada is the culture. Yeah, okay. I'm curious what she's going to talk about specifically. I have some ideas of why many aspects of Canadian culture are probably better than some aspects of American culture. Let's see.
Canadians are known for their polite, tolerant, diverse, and friendly culture.
Yeah.
And that is a huge draw for many Americans who are seeking change in culture and lifestyle.
Yeah. So just real quick what she said. The 4 things she said.
Canadians are known for their polite, tolerant, diverse, and friendly.
Friendly, polite, tolerant, diverse. Yes, diverse, multicultural. Probably because of the immigration laws that I just learned about right in this video. Just the fact that Canadians have a different customs, culture, society, in the sense that Canadians seem to be not just more polite, that's kind of a stereotype, that Canadians are so polite. And although that's true, it extends deeper than that. Like, it means that Canadians are just more empathetic, more of a community, whereas American culture feels like we're a lot more selfish and self-centered and just trying to get ahead in our own lives, no matter how we affect others. And it feels like that's a bad part of American culture. I mean, some parts of that are good, like it makes us very competitive and want to be the best and the greatest. No matter who I have to, no matter who I'm three times more likely to murder in the way. But I don't think that's necessarily the best way to live. It just seems like these aspects of Canadian culture make for, I don't know, more peaceful life? Like happier, less stress? Like those sort of things.
Culture, and that is a huge draw for many Americans who are seeking change in culture and lifestyle.
Yeah.
Canada has a welcoming and inclusive attitude towards everyone, and that simply feels nice. Thanks to generous immigration policy, the Canadian population is more culturally diverse than in the United States.
Right.
Almost 45% of Canadians belong to the second generation of immigrants, and around 20% were born outside of Canada. On the contrary, only 13% of the population of the US are born outside of the country.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah. Like, Americans, like, we're still getting used to seeing people from other cultures, like, in America. Whenever someone from another country is in the United States and you meet them, or if us Americans encounter someone from another country, we're always very surprised, we're very curious, very like, what, huh? And can even come across as like, oh, how strange, you're from where? Oh, you talk differently, ooh. And in that sense, yeah, we're a little bit behind the curve in being more, I don't know, accommodating to people from other countries, just because America isn't really that diverse. Like, we're a little bit diverse, but sounds like compared to Canada, it's still like a thing that's we haven't quite caught up on, for sure.
The amount of illegal immigrants in the US might give an impression that this percentage is significantly higher. In Canada, no matter where you're from, you can always feel like you belong here, and it can feel like home. To add to that, Canada invests in making sure that newcomers assimilate as much as they can upon arrival in Canada. The government has various newcomer programs that teach newcomers everything they need to get up on their feet sooner.
Really?
Things like language.
Really? Canada is Very, very, very accommodating to like immigration, huh? That's what I'm learning a lot here today. Wow.
How to look for jobs, how to rent an apartment, how banking system works, and how to apply for benefit programs and so on.
Yeah.
Why are you thinking about moving to Canada? Or why did you move here? Please.
Wow. All right, there we go. Oh my gosh. I laughed because holy cow, that was a lot of good points she made. This is a very interesting video. Very good. This was by Make That Change. And I got to give this a like because I liked that quite a bit. I don't mean to poo-poo on the United States too much. And I even found myself defending the United States a few times during this video. But I can't deny that the vast majority of these points were really quite true and really important, honestly. Like, it absolutely makes sense to me now why some Americans really do, like, leave their entire life behind and actually move to Canada, a whole different country. I thought that sounded so extreme. I thought that sounded exaggerated. But she went over the stats in part one, and quite a few Americans do that every year. And after learning about all these reasons, I mean, it actually makes a lot of sense to me, even though it seems like such a massive jump. Um, for some people, you know, they just get that passionate and they come to the conclusion like, I could have a much, much better life and be a lot happier if I move to Canada. And they do it. And this video actually cleared up for me how an American could really make that leap, and it's really not that unreasonable. Wow! So I really quite enjoyed this. This really opened my eyes. Anyway, if you enjoyed this as well, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on any of these reasons why Americans should move to Canada. Or if you don't want us to move to Canada, whichever way, feel free to leave a comment. That'd be very fun to see. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to Canada and Canadian culture, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching and see you next time.